Tuli ku Parliament olunaku olwaleero ng'era olunaku olwaleero omukulu His Excellency the elected President of Uganda Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi ali ku Parliament awamu ne Leader of Opposition omukulu Honorable Joel Senyonyi bano ne batuuse dda ku Parliament okubaawo n'okulaba ebigenda mu maaso nga tuli mu kusomera eggwanga alternative budget yaffe gye tulina omwaka 2025 era nga President Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi yakulembeddemu baganda baffe mikwano gyaffe okuva mu National Unity Platform n'okubeerawo okuwulira biki ebigenda mu maaso mu ggwanga. Omanyi National Unity Platform kyekibiina ekyasinze okubeera organized wano era twongera obajjukiza n'obategeeza nti ffe tukutte tunywereza ddala ate tetuta. President atuukidde maanyi mangi, atuukidde mukwano mungi, wabula ate olunaku olwaleero lunaku lwa mugatta anti His Excellency the President of Uganda Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi ate olunaku olwaleero lwe lunaku lwennyini lwasisinkanye omukulu Mathias Mpuga Nsamba era ne babaako enjogeraganya zibatuuseeko. Twongera obajjukiza ne bategeeza nti bino baagi twabirinda dda. Kino ekifaananyi twakirindidde akabanga akawera okukirabako naye tulina essanyu nti olwaleero tusobola okutuula ne tukirabako kitambuza nga tuli mu maaso. Twongere okwesabira, twongere okwebeeramu, twongere okulaba nga tutambuliza ddala eggwanga buli linotambula. Uganda eyawamu ye Uganda etambula. Uganda eyawamu Bannayuganda kibalindiridde tweyanziza Mukama Katonda bali kwagala nkyukakyuka bwe bali kwagala ggwanga lyaffe.
They've been promising to complete the new chambers. I think the initial completion date was 2019. We are in 2025. Every morning as I climb to go to my office, I hear people knocking things with hammers. But we don't know what progress is happening there. But they will knock to make you think they're doing some work. That is Rocco, by the way, which was given taxpayer money. And there's nothing happening there. But I'll tell you what, they'll come after the population. We have got the UPDFs in discipline, rather discipline and professionalism that are undermined by politicization and lawful civilian trials in military courts. Very problematic issue. Even after the Supreme Court says the court martial should not try civilians. We have several of these, our young people that are still held in jail. The likes of Yasin, Machete, Sheriff Kalanzi, Anthony Agaba, also known as Bobi, and several others. They're still there. And then we say we have got rule of law. We've got to address these issues, colleagues. For us to have the kind of country that we will cherish. Of course, is unchecked foreign deployments without parliamentary sanction. They deployed the UPDF in South Sudan and then came to Parliament belatedly. And even the Speaker, which I found problematic, the Speaker said, no, we're not going to debate this issue because it's of huge diplomatic concern. So why are we there as Parliament? Why? Because say, no, this one pass it immediately and then adjourn the house and run away. Why are we then present? So that shows you that there's something fishy about some of these engagements. Of course, there are other concerns, human rights violations, including extrajudicial killings and suppression of dissent, which further erode public trust. Additionally, this sector, defense, suffers from redundant funding, ghost soldiers on payrolls, and militarization of civilian roles, contradicting constitutional mandates for a non-partisan army. We strongly urge, one, we've got to improve welfare for UPDF personnel, including salaries, housing, and healthcare. We've got to enhance accountability for defense expenditures, particularly classified budgets. Then strengthen border security to prevent illegal arms trafficking and improve training and equipment for national security forces. Let me talk about agriculture, which is a favorite for Madame Agnes Kirabo. She's very passionate about that, and rightly so. Government has not prioritized public spending on the agricultural sector, despite the AU Cup Malabo 2014 and the recent 2025 Kampala declarations for at least 10% allocation of the national budget to this sector. Budget allocation to the sector has stagnated at less than 3% of the national budget, with a component of more than 50% as external finance. The sectoral growth rate is at 3.8% out of the recommended 6%. About 40% of the agricultural processing factories countrywide are non-functional, but they tell us they are factories. With our tea and coffee factories operating capacity at only about 50%. So instead of bolstering that, they're now putting up new ones which are being given free taxpayers' money. Additionally, farmers are still faced with the challenge of agricultural extension and advisory services. Access to agriculture, credit and finance is problematic, that's at about 12%. The high cost of agricultural inputs and the influx of counterfeits, that's at 30%. The cries in the fisheries subsector. Fishermen are always hounded, beaten, killed because of trying to eke out a living. Limited progress on access to water for agricultural production. Deteriorating prices of agricultural products on the world market, among others. Many Ugandans are malnourished. If you read reports from entities like Food Rights Alliance, many of our young people are malnourished. And yet, Uganda has got nearly half of all the arable land in East Africa. That's land suitable for agriculture. Nearly half of all the arable land in East Africa is here in Uganda. But we have people starving. This is what we must do. One, adhere to the implementation of the National Agricultural Finance Policy to align it with the Malabo 2014 and Kampala CAP 2025 declarations, and commitment to align with NDP4 targets. We've got to revamp the National Seed Company, expedite the National Agricultural Extension Strategy, finalize the National Irrigation Master Plan, and then urgently operationalize the Fisheries and Aquaculture Act of 2022. There's the tourism sector. Tourism has got a lot of potential in this our country, but it is neglected. Limited funding happening there. The infrastructure leading to some of these game parks is in a sorry state. I remember there's a time some tourists got stuck on the road for a day and a half, and the then Minister of State for Tourism, said that that's part of the tourism experience, for them to see what a third world country is like. So these guys were stuck for nearly 2 days trying to push their car, because they took off time from their country for maybe 4 days to come and spend some dollars here in Uganda. But for 2 days they're stuck on the road. And the one Chiwanda Subi, who was the Minister of State for Tourism, then said that's part of the tourism experience. Those are Museveni's ministers. Let me talk about trade, industry and cooperative sector. Maybe I'll let you read that in the booklets we have availed to you. There's water and environment sector, which is also very critical. I'll encourage us to read so that I don't take too long here. Look at the proposals that we have there really. Strengthening enforcement of environmental protection laws, investing in reforestation and wetland restoration programs, improving access to clean water, particularly in rural areas. Many Ugandans today don't have access to clean water. Enhancing waste management infrastructure to reduce pollution. There's the energy sector. And we are saying we've got to expand rural electrification through off-grid solar and mini-grid solutions. Only about 30% of our country is connected to the national grid. 70% are in darkness. I know it's difficult for you here in Kampala to believe that 70% of our country is not connected to the national grid. These are things that we need to deal with. There's the water and transport sector. And I'll urge us to read that component too. Lands, housing and urban sector. Critical concerns there. Our shadow minister is always talking about them. Gender, labor and social development. Let me talk about internal affairs. The internal affairs sector in Uganda faces key challenges, including underfunding for security and law enforcement, inadequate police infrastructure, corruption, and human rights concerns. Other issues include slow service delivery in immigration and national identification processes, risking cybercrime and congestion in correctional facilities due to case backlog and limited rehabilitation programs. We've got to do this. One, increase funding for recruitment, training and equipping the police force to improve security and public trust. Many of you know that when you have a challenge and you call on police to come to your aid, they will struggle to come because you find there's one car for I don't know how many sub-counties. Then many times they don't have fuel, genuinely so. During the killings in Masaka, a committee of parliament went and interacted with, I think it was one of the station, one of those regional fellows. And this guy was honest with them and said, look, I've got one car for most of this place, and many times it does not have fuel. So people call us saying machete wielding men are here, and we cannot move. And I remember the minister coming out to the Minister for Security, Honorable Jim Owezi. He came out to castigate this police officer, in fact wanted to sanction him. It was until the public said, but the man is speaking the truth. There's just one truck in that whole region area, that specific one where the committee was. Many times it doesn't have fuel. And he said, now, with my little salary, should I be the one fueling this car when people call? And he said, genuinely, people call for help. I want to help, but how do I help? And Mwezi was saying he's making government look bad, as opposed to availing what is required. We've got to strengthen cybersecurity measures and digital forensic capabilities to combat online crime, which is increasing by the day. We've got to expand fire stations across the country to ensure a timely response to fire outbreaks, improve efficiency in passport issuance, border security, and national ID registration. Enhance rehabilitation programs in prisons to reduce recidivism and promote reintegration into society. Strengthen anti-corruption mechanisms within law enforcement agencies to eliminate bribery and misconduct. Promote community policing initiatives to foster better relations between law enforcement and citizens. Some of the community policing that happens today, you see one general dam leader going to talk bad about the opposition and recruit people into NRM. That's not what policing, community policing should be. But the likes of General Damulida have interpreted it that way. You'll go to people, you come, we join this party, and work together. So to him, that's the brilliant idea of community policing. We've got to strengthen enforcement of disciplinary action against errant officers who violate the law in the conduct of their duties, especially those who brutalize the citizenry. Let me conclude this way. Our alternative budget priorities focus on investing in key sectors such as healthcare, education, agriculture, and infrastructure to drive inclusive development. Adequate funding for public hospitals, support for small-scale farmers, improvements in education, and investment in sustainable infrastructure are essential for building an economy that benefits all Ugandans. We advocate for a budget that centers on the people's needs, fostering a more just and prosperous Uganda. This kind of budget is achievable once you put people first and combat corruption, which is eating up the resources meant to deliver services to the citizenry. For as long as we keep losing over 10 trillion shillings a year, as per the IGG report, there is just no way, ladies and gentlemen, that we shall have resources to invest in these priority sectors. Those who steal taxpayers' money are promoted and pampered, as opposed to being locked up in jail and forced to return the stolen loot. We have all watched the debate regarding the Umeme concession that comes to an end today. Government entered into a bad deal with this company, like they normally do with many of these agreements they sign. Years ago, this deal was detrimental to the country, as they normally do with many other deals and agreements. Today, Umeme says government owes them $234 million US. Government told Parliament that it owes $190 million US. While the Auditor General says the figure is only $118 million. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what theft looks like. This, exactly. Then you have a figure, $234 million. Government is saying $190 million. Auditor General, who is part of government, is saying, no, it is $118 million US. Somebody wants to rip off the taxpayer along the way. There's no way this country can develop with such confusion. Because even the Auditor General's figure of $118 million US, some of us are saying we want to scrutinize that. And that's what we told the presiding officer on that day. We said, you have told us you've received a report from the Auditor General saying the figure is $118 million US. And you're asking us to pass it as Parliament. What are we passing? I am very sure even the presiding officer had not read that report. I am sure. They didn't know what the contents of that report were. And then you're saying, quickly, let's pass it so that we deal with this issue. Yes, we don't want the country to lose money, but what exactly are we passing? We protested, but our colleagues on the other side say, the eyes have it. But are we sure of what the exact money is? Because even the Auditor General's reports, normally they are brought to Parliament, we scrutinize them. Because there can be gaps therein. Because now who should we believe? Somebody somewhere is not telling the true story regarding women. And I can assure you we are going to dig up until we get to the bottom of the truth. So that taxpayers' money is not taken for a ride. I'd like to implore us all as a country to say no to these machinations and get our country in order. As the opposition, let's continue to keep the government in check, even as we work hard to send it off, so that Ugandans can have a government that is accountable to them and prioritizes their well-being. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As I leave the stage, I just want to appreciate colleagues with whom we do this work. I know Honorable Helen talked about the shadow cabinet. I want to members of the shadow cabinet, thank you. I normally harass you, and I'm using the word harass in bold and underline, so that we get to do our work. So that we have these alternatives in place. So I'm normally bothering you, please have fun with this, with the technical team and so on. So I want to appreciate all of you for all of the work that you do put in. And the technical staff. Those ones I harass a lot more. For you, your colleagues, sometimes I have to restrain myself. But I have to appreciate the technical. Recruiting new people every day. Where did that money come from that cannot take care of these ones? That's the ridiculousness of politics. So, with the very nice to see to it that we produce this one, because it is important that Ugandans see this here is a credible government in waiting. So I want to appreciate you all. Our shadow finance minister should have been here. He's out of town on some engagements, but I do appreciate him and the rest of us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me now invite an OB of this place. He was here quite briefly, but he was around. And his presence was felt. The leader of the National Unity Platform, the Honorable Bwakiliza Robert, please come and speak to us.
Thank you very much. Parliamentary front. My leader of opposition when I was here, Right Honorable Bwakiliza,